We are live, everybody. We've got our good friend Alex here, Alex Farling with Lifecycle Insights, and we are here for today's event. Spring is in the air. Are your QBRs in need of some spring training? How you doing there, Alex?
Living the dream, sir. Always having fun.
That's awesome. We're going to go live here on Facebook. Had a small technical glitch here, but we're ready to rock and roll.
Gotta love technology. It never fails to let you down.
Exactly. I've got an awesome background here. I used this last week for another event, and I just love it because it is spring break for us here in Michigan. And
I was just in Tampa for spring break, which was quite interesting.
That's right. You were
way nicer than Michigan. Yeah,
you were. That's right. And how was it down in Tampa?
It was beautiful. And then I got back on a plane to Baltimore, where when I got off the plane, it was like 34 degrees. So,
oh my gosh,
yeah,
that's crazy.
Maybe not want to leave.
Yeah. Well, I'm here in Michigan. My wife's here in Michigan. My daughter's here in Michigan, but my 17-year-old son is actually in the Tampa area right now with one of his friends' family, and he flew down yesterday by himself. So it was quite an adventure. A little bit crazy for me having my 17-year-old on a flight by himself heading down that way, but he's enjoying himself in much better weather there than it is here in Michigan. So
good for him.
Yeah, definitely. We have a good group of participants here,
awesome.
In different areas of the country, and we're ready to kick it off. And we got to talk about spring cleaning. Spring is in the air, right?
Yeah. So that's a cute little play on words, because at Lifecycle Insights we love our corny marketing. But yeah, we've launched ourselves a new product, and we'll touch on that very lightly today. But mostly what we're going to talk about is things that every MSP can do, whether they're a Lifecycle partner or not, to kind of clean up and refine that QBR process to make sure that we're giving our clients stuff that they actually want and need to see as we meet and talk to them. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I built the obligatory about the presenter slide, but I feel like your group has listened to me rant for way too long and seen me do all my soapbox pitches and all that kind of stuff. So if you don't know me, I owned an MSP for about 16 and a half years. I've been in the channel for 18 and a half years. And I'm kind of a recovering MSP owner at this point. And I spent my entire time as an MSP owner trying to build a better mousetrap, right? It's what made it fun. I was always trying to fix a problem. At the end of it though, my big problem that I was really passionate about fixing was the quarterly business review process and that client engagement process. So as luck would have it, I've found myself on the vendor side, helping hundreds of MSPs solve for these exact same problems. And that's kind of where I wound up at Lifecycle Insights. So quick, easy, fairly painless about the presenter here. But what I really want to talk about is that QBR and kind of how we got here. I hesitate to tell the story until we talk about, of where we're going, until we talk about how we got here. And, my favorite is we listened to people who were supposed to know better than us. And that got us to a point where we give QBRs that our customers don't care about, that our customers say, oh, it's fine, everything's good, we're happy, you don't need to come meet with us, right? And why do they think that? Well, they think that we're coming to sell them something, because every time we show up, we've got our hand out going, hey, I need another 20 grand. We bought these fancy RMM tools. We retreated to our IT offices, and we said, we'll fix 85% of everything remotely. Some big vendor told me I could, and it would be okay. And we lost the relationship with our customers. We really just stopped having that, hey, knock, knock, I was in the building and wanted to make sure everything was okay. Conversation with our customers, and it really did damage to those relationships. And the only time we showed up was to justify our existence, to kind of explain why we were sending these big invoices, and hey, here's how many tickets I ticketed and how many backups I backed up and how many viruses I antivirused. Don't you love me, right? And your customer goes, I don't really care about that stuff. I pay you so that I don't have to watch it and listen to it. And at the end of the day, we just gobbled up that bad advice from our vendors, who said, go justify your existence with this big expensive product that I'm selling you, and go have this conversation with your customers. And one of the vendors even went so far as to design a function that let us show our customer how many hours we would be billing for if every patch we applied took 3 minutes of a human's time to apply the patch.
Right.
And people ran out to their customers and went, hey, look at this. This is how much time I'm saving you. And they went, I just turned on auto update at home and it just works. Why am I paying you why would I pay you 3 minutes a patch to do that?
Yep.
So, we kind of set ourselves in a defensive posture, right? We've screwed this up. We need to go back to our customers and say, I know my QBRs haven't always been the best. And maybe in fact, quarterly isn't the right thing. I literally just put a post on LinkedIn that was quoting Marnie when she says, we'll stop calling them QBRs if you'll stop Google searching for it. We really call them QBRs because we're trying to capture that SEO to drive you guys to our website so we can talk about the cadence that you ought to actually meet with your customer, right? Not everybody needs, deserves, wants a quarterly business review, right?
And, I think the other thing too, I want to jump back to, you're talking about in that previous slide is, I think a lot of times we want to kill trees. We want to kill trees with
Thud factor report. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and one of my business mentors from years past, one very big thing he taught me is just because you can doesn't mean you should. So just because you have different tools that can print out all these different reports doesn't mean that you should be printing them all and bringing them to your clients, because you got to think through what value are those reports providing. And
this goes back to individual customer need, right? If you have a customer who's in a high compliance environment and they have a CIO on staff who can read that big fancy report and it delivers some value to them, then print it and deliver it to them.
Yeah.
If your customer is and I always go back to a small manufacturing shop that I worked with at my MSP, and they had 9 or 10 computers, I don't remember. They did 2 things with their computers. They printed mailing labels and they sent invoices. The only 2 things they did. The rest of their time was spent on a machine floor in a 30,000 square foot warehouse, making the metal strapping that holds big, heavy things to pallets.
Oh, yeah,
they're not technical. They're not fancy. They literally make one thing, and they made it well, and they made it cheap, and they invoiced and they sent out, mailing labels, and they printed mailing labels, and that was all they did. So they weren't technical. If I tried to meet with them every quarter, they were like, dude, we don't need to see you again. You were just here back in January. Like, we love you at all, but I got metal strapping to make. So
yeah, I mean,
a lot of it's about fitting it to your customer's need.
Yeah. And I think, we as MSPs, when we determine, we often, we don't put ourselves in the client's shoes. We automatically go this cookie cutter route, saying, okay, as I'm building out my MSP model, this is what everybody else is doing. And that this is the way everybody else has been doing, this way it's been done. So I'm going to do this as well. And we also then apply that to every client. And like you're saying, we need to look at the individual needs of the client and just determine what their needs are.
And we kind of think every MSP should have their cookie cutter, but then there's variations of that cookie cutter for every one of your clients, right? You, as an MSP, we have our DNA. There's a reason our customers work with us. There's a reason that your customers work with you and my customers work with me. And maybe they wouldn't have been a good crossover because I'm an obnoxious jerk and you're really nice and easygoing. My customers could laugh at that and yours probably would have been offended. So there's something in your DNA that makes your customers cling on to you and go, I know, like, and trust this guy and I want to do business with him, right? He's like me. He protects me. Something about it builds that confidence. So, keep what is yours, keep what made you special, and then expand on it with some of the best practices and the things you can learn in the industry to build your own cookie cutter. And then take that cookie cutter and build it out to align with an individual customer's need. And again, if you've got the super technical customer, bring them a little bit more technical detail. If you've got a non-technical customer, distill it down a little further, dumb it down a little further. But the intent is to bring the right content, which is the content that enables that customer to make a buying decision, right? We really, and I always steal from Colin Powell, who said he had I think it was the 30-70 rule. And he said, if you give me between 30 and 70% of the information, I can make the right decision. If you don't bring me 30% of the information, I'm in the dark and I'm going to make the wrong decision. If you bring me more than 70% of the information, I'll have analysis paralysis. I'll have too much information to review. I'll either won't make a decision or I'll wait so long to make a battlefield decision that it's no longer relevant and I'm making a bad decision. So he had this rule, and I think that applies to MSPs and their customers. You never need to bring anybody 100%.
Yep.
You never need to bring anybody less than 30%. We are stewards of their information and it's our job to give it to them, but make sure you're bringing the relevant and the right amount of information just to enable your customer to make a decision and move on. If it's more than they need to make the decision, you probably showed them too much.
Yep.
You
Exactly.
probably delivered that thud factor report. Colin Powell's smarter than me. I stole it from him, but I think that if we kind of steal little tidbits like that along the way, we just learn to be better.
Because we all know the deer in the headlights, which most of us, when we think of deer in the headlights, is the clients don't understand. But then you have the opposite effect, where you have delivered too much information and it's information overload, which creates deer in the headlights.
More than we realize, I think. So that at the end of the day, we want a delivery process that lets us bring to the customer a consistent set of reports, so that it doesn't matter if I do the report, if I do the presentation, or if someone else in my organization does it, we get the same outcome. And for the most part, we automate as much as we can, and then we can delegate the parts that we can't. And that's something we'll talk about as we go today, because automation and delegation are two separate things, but both of them allow a leader, an owner, to step back from their QBR and be less involved, and allow someone else to do a little bit more of the work. And I think those are two really powerful things. We have one partner that I'll talk about in a little bit that is just doing amazing things with it, and is really able to step out and have his team give him everything that he needs to go do the QBRs without having to do all the work himself. And I'm lazy, so I like that methodology. So when we get into the agenda, it's something that I didn't even use as an MSP, I'll admit it. When we started writing Lifecycle Insights, one of our partners came to me and said, "Where do I deliver the agenda to the customer?" And I went, "Well, the agenda is always the same. I'm trying to sell them something, but we want them to not think I'm trying to sell them something. What's And he explained the agenda to me and really made me smarter. So, the agenda really is designed to set up the conversation with your customer and really show them the value of why they want to show up, and then strip away anything that might derail the conversation, and we call these roadblocks and distractions. But this is that whole thing where, you call me and say, "Hey, it's time for us to have your quarterly business review." And I go, "Okay." And you say, "What do you want to talk about?" And I go, "Well, Sally was mean to Billy on a ticket last week, and I want to yell about that." Right? And you just know already, this is going to derail your entire conversation, right? You had 45 minutes planned to in, out, done, talk about a budget, talk about some replacement projects we want to do, figure out if we're in the same place on 2FA and cybersecurity and all, and Billy's yelling at Sally or vice versa or whatever. And that's going to just, your project's going out the window, right?
Right.
So we use this agenda ahead of time. We send it out of the way ahead of time to make the customer understand that this is more of a strategic meeting than that. It's not a tactical, like could have been solved in an email or a phone call kind of thing. This is a big strategic conversation. We're going to make it about them, but when they come back to us and say, "Hey, I want to talk to you about that Billy and Sally ticket," you're going to turn around on me and say, "Alex, you know what? Your satisfaction is just too important for me to let this big issue wait until our meeting. Let's go ahead and solve for that right now. And then by the time we have the meeting, we'll have clear heads and we can worry about the big strategic picture and the things that we want to work on." And as soon as that was explained to me, it kind of cleared up for me the how do I stay on track and how do I avoid that, walking in and having a client throw a grenade right in the middle of what I thought was going to be an amazing presentation with all the reports I had all ready to go and all that kind of stuff, and just totally derailing. And the agenda done right is your opportunity to float the subjects out there early, extract that what about the customer from them early, so you can come prepared to talk about the things that are worthy of that time, and so you can clear off your plate the things that aren't worthy of that time.
Yeah, and it's an absolute disservice to walk into any meeting without both parties knowing what's on the table. And the expectations need to be set. And if you don't set those expectations, then it's an open book of anything that could be discussed.
Well, and are you more likely to show up if I just say, "Hey, I want to chat with you," and you in the back of your mind think every time he wants to chat, it costs me money and he's going to try and sell me something?
Right.
Or are you more likely to show up if I say, "Dan, I've prepared a technology budget for you that goes through 2026. I'd like to review this with you and make sure that it meets your needs and that you're okay with some of the security vulnerabilities that maybe we don't cover if this is all the money that we spend between now and then."
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
There's a much more strategic big boy conversation going on there than "Here's a quote, I'd like you to sign it so I can replace some Windows 7 machines."
Yep.
Yeah. So that's the purpose of the agenda. And for those of you who are doing these still kind of flying by the seat of your pants, I would say this is the first step to really standardizing and building out something that's usable over and over. And if you look at the agenda that we have here, and we do have a download link, the bit.ly link at the bottom there will let you download a sample agenda. But if you look at this, really what you're doing is you're taking some to-dos that you take home. These are the things that wind up being left over at the end, and you're just going to bring those over as your carryover items to the next one. And these agendas kind of seem to just roll. The things that you took home as a to-do item are the updates that you provide at the next one, and then you take home some new homework. And this just enables this to become this rolling exercise where the client's expecting you to come back and have another meeting in 3 months so we can talk about the things I had to take home and work on for them. So it becomes one of those things that helps my client just want to come back in the future.
Exactly.
The next thing is the risk assessment, though. If you haven't graduated to the point where you're leading with cybersecurity and risk today, I would say it's really time to step back and take a look at what you're doing, right? As MSPs, it's impossible. Gone is the day where we can say, I'm just the help desk guy. I don't do security.
Right.
We just can't anymore. And so I was getting ready to go make a presentation in Orlando, and then I was going down the next day, and somebody posted this cartoon, and I just couldn't help but steal it and use it in my slides. And the point was that there's a million competing standards out there. They're all over the place. You can have HIPAA, you can have NIST, PCI, CMMC, CIS. If you're in Australia, you've got the Australian Essential 8. You've got ISO 27001, SOC 2, you name it. There's a million compliance standards out there. And that's a problem for MSPs because we don't know which one to align to. So what I would say is that, number one, we should be looking at clients who align with those standards that we're able to present to or to prepare to. If I'm a one-man MSP, I'm probably not wanting to take on the client who needs to do a SOC 2 audit. It's probably more than I can handle.
Yeah.
But also that the standard that I need to align my client to is bigger and different than what PCI or HIPAA or NIST or any of those delivers, because we have one more thing involved, right? If you came to me and said, what's your favorite firewall, Dan? What's the firewall you recommend at your MSP?
Yeah, I mean,
what is it? What brand are you? What brand do you guys focus on?
Oh yeah, so this is an actual question for me.
Yeah.
Omninet. So
okay. So you provide Omninet firewalls. I've never logged into one. So if I take over a customer from Dan's MSP, I'm going to switch them over to a Sophos firewall because it's what my team knows how to manage.
Right.
And I have this thing called supportability. Your Omninet firewall checks all the boxes, all the compliance boxes, tick, 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 tick. I'm compliant with CIS, with NIST, with HIPAA, with whatever those things are. But when I go to Alex's MSP, I'm no longer supportable.
Right.
So if your risk assessment that you deliver to your client doesn't include supportability as a factor, you have a problem. You're bringing on customers and you're telling them, we've checked all the boxes, but now I've brought you on in an unsupportable configuration. When something goes wrong, I'm learning on the job to get you back up and running your business. And that's a bad place to be. So, in my mind, you're going to build a list of standards that you're going to assess your customer against that includes not just the best practices in compliance, but also a checkbox for every product, every service, every policy, every procedure, and every best practice that you think that customer ought to follow. And this becomes a long list because there's no standard out there that says thou must have an electronic funds transfer policy in place in your business. I'm not aware of one. There may be one. There probably is one because there's a billion of them out there. But it's something that at my MSP, we always went to our customer and said, I need an electronic funds transfer policy. I need a copy of yours and I need to hold it on site at my MSP. Because if your CFO, who's marked in my tools as VIP, very important, do whatever the heck they want, give them great service. If they call in and said, I need help wiring $20,000 because my CEO told me to, my entry-level help desk person is going to log in and help them do that. Unless I have a policy that says, hey, we require two-factor or two forms of authentication. You have to get an email from me that says wire money, and then you have to call me and say, hey, Alex, did you really mean for me to do this, or is this phishing?
Exactly. Those human factor. It is
but
human.
Imagine the liability at your MSP. If your tier 1 engineer helps a VIP wire money to a Saudi prince.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't even want to have that conversation. So let's get that policy, that procedure documented. Let's share it between the MSP and the customer and make sure that when that my team is trained, that when something is probably covered in a policy or procedure, we should look there first before we provide support, no matter how VIP the human is.
And when you have those standards in place, because there will be things that might fall outside of the scope, then it's becomes a question of, okay, we just don't do it. We take a step back, we breathe, and then we say, okay, how do we proceed in this scenario? Because it doesn't fall into the normal standards.
Right.
And because otherwise it just becomes a recipe for disaster, just to be able to, because we're all here to serve, right? You want to take care of the client, you want to take care of the end user. But if you just proceed and do that without making sure that you've checked that box and ensure it fell within those standards, then disasters happen and liability occurs.
And I used to joke with my staff that, and with my customers that, hey, you know what? I let all my staff surf Facebook on their lunch break. I don't care. Right. I have a million layers of protection on their notebooks. You know, I just kind of encourage them to use their notebook, you know, a little bit more loosely than you might at your business. If you call into my help desk and ask for support, my guys might deliver a level of support that's different from what you want, unless you tell me what you want. So I need to know your content filtering policy. I need to know your lunchtime behaviors. I need to know your, you know, what the practices are around electronic funds transfer and all of those different things. And we really need to help our clients write those policies. And by the way, that's billable work.
Yeah.
It's not help desk work, right? So get good at policy, learn how to write policy, learn how to help your customers write policy. Somebody way smarter than me told me 2 weeks ago that, you know, a crappy what we actually do policy is way better than the best aspirational boilerplate you could possibly write. So, you know, strip out the boilerplate, strip out the junk, and let's write a policy that's shorter in the same language that you use to run the business. And let's give our customers some policies and procedures to help check boxes on an assessment to say, yeah, we've documented 20 of the things that we really care about. And now we know how to treat this client, to treat this environment, and to do better. And the other thing the assessment shows is it helps you value helps you show why the customer pays you, right? Because when you brought me in, you were aligned with 17% of my best practices. Today, you're aligned with 75% of my best practices. And we continue to meet quarterly or semi-annually or annually to improve that standing and put you in a better place every day, right? North Korea gets dirtier, China gets dirtier, Russia gets dirtier, and we continue to adjust.
And, you know, and we're in the business of serving people. I think often we get, you know, caught in the mix up of we're in the business of serving technology. Technology is a component of what we do, but you know, to use the phrase "people buy from people," well, we serve people, and it takes that human element. We can't just throw in a whole bunch of tools and just say, oh, we can throw this in place and this in place and this in place, and you know, we can let the technology support their environment. We have to have these, you know, these grown-up discussions and these person-to-person discussions in order to determine, you know, not only what the standards look like, but also what those expectations are. And it requires us to have those human conversations.
Well, and you say grown-up and human-to-human conversations and stuff. Sometimes we have to be the grown-up in the room, right?
Right.
Every business is at a different point where maturity is concerned. If you listen to Paul Dipple talk about operational maturity for MSPs, this really applies to your business as well. And what you'll find is that at some point in your growth path, you'll outgrow some of your customers. And the budget is a perfect example of that. It's actually a great segue, because the budget is something that an immature business doesn't really pay any attention to. Cash flow in, cash flow out, as long as one's bigger than the other, life is good and we're moving on, right? And we all started our MSP that way. But as you mature, you start to budget. You start to build out things that help you, you know, set some benchmarks to know that we're doing, you know, to know that we're winning or that we're not winning. And I've been recently telling a joke that really sets up the budgeting conversation really well. And it's a simple knock knock joke, which is knock knock. Who's there? MSP? MSP who? MSP who wants you to spend another $20,000 on a project that I should have told you about 6 months ago.
Right.
Right. And we've all been there. If you haven't been there, you're better than me. Congratulations. Because I've been there. Had a redneck in Southern Delaware threaten to shoot me if I ever came to his office without warning him, asking for that kind of money again. And he had a shotgun in the backseat in a gun rack in the back of a jacked up pickup truck. I believed him. So, you know, the budget is kind of the third thing that I think that we all ought to be bringing in there. You know, we talked about the agenda, we talked about the assessment. Now we'll talk about the budget. And the TCO budget, the total cost of ownership budget, is something that I've really doubled down on in the last 2 years, and have really just come to terms with the fact that the MSP is the only person at most of our clients who understands their technology, who understands the environment, who understands the software they use, who knows everything about the technology. They're the only person qualified to build a budget that is, this is the cost of owning all of my technology, right? The guy who does the cameras can't do it. The CFO can barely do it, probably can't do it. They don't have the visibility into what needs to be replaced and when. So this is really our almost a requirement. And I was standing down in Austin, and Chris Weiser was standing on stage talking to his peer group one day, and he said, budgets don't get cut, expenses do. If you ever want to figure out how to make sure that your services aren't what's getting cut, deliver your client a budget, because then they'll plan for that expense and it's less likely to get cut. And I'll be damned if he wasn't right. So we talk about two different kinds of budgets. We have the short-term budget, which is really tactical. When does Bob in accounting get a new PC, right? When does the squeaky wheel get some grease? But then we have that longer-term budget, and this is the one that has real value. Every one of us has a cadence to at most of our customers, to their replacement lifecycle. Windows XP died, we replaced any and all PCs that were left, had a big spike in the budget. Then, because we replaced everything, there wasn't anything to replace for a couple of years, and the budget went lean. They didn't have to spend money. Then all those XP machines started to get old, Windows 7 went end of life, and we spent a bunch of money again.
Right.
Well, guess what's going to happen in 5 years when all those Windows 7 machines go end of life, and when all those Windows 7 replacements, now Windows 10 machines, go end of life? Our customers are going to have another spike in their budget.
Yep.
How much more popular are we if we start warning them about 2024 and 2025 today than if we start warning them about it in January of 2025, which is the traditional MSP behavior? And
when you take a look at you walk into a new account, it's one thing, you talk about how I should have delivered this $20,000 budget to your proposal to you 6 months ago. When you walk into a new account, you're going to identify where there's holes are and where they need to spend money. But and that's not on us as far as why they haven't had that budget in the past. Going forward, though, it is our responsibility to ensure that they have that budget.
And that's a great point. We teach MSPs to use it as a wedge tactic, right?
Yeah.
I'll go into a prospect and lay out a sample budget and say, hey, I know everybody presents things a little different. If you work with me, I'm going to give you a budget every year that looks like this. Does that help you run your business, or do you need to see this in a different way? Is your current guy presenting it in a different way that you'd like to see it? And they're going to go, my current guy doesn't give me a budget. He just asks me for 20 grand every time he shows up.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they've got little hearts in their eyes, and they're looking at Dan and they're like, hey, Dan, come be my IT guy, because I want a budget. And
exactly.
It builds this wedge without you ever saying, hey, that guy you're working with already is selling you short. I don't have to say it. I don't have to throw him under the bus, right? I can simply say, if you work with me, this is kind of what it looks like. So we do that short-term tactical budget, 6 months, 12 months, something like that, the dollars you're going to spend. And then we do the long-term strategic, identify the Windows 10 replacement project years in advance. I call it the wide angle budget, the WAG budget. If you don't read Jim Collins, you should read everything Jim Collins ever wrote. The WAG is a Jim Collins term. But, these are two types of budgets you should present to every customer to eliminate their surprises. I call it being the canary in the coal mine, right? 2025 is going to suck. We're not there yet, but you should know about it now, and keep chirping until you get there. It's much easier to go to your customer and say, your technology expenses are up 50% this year. We've been talking about it for 3 years. Did you want to do the leasing thing we talked about? Hardware as a service? Have you been saving money? You ready to just go buy the stuff? What's the best way for us to get through this?
And, I've always broken my MSP down, and I've coached many about the same process, that MSP businesses are broken down into 4 steps, or the relationships. First and foremost, that assessment process, identifying the strengths and weaknesses in that organization. Step 2 is remediation. And that's where we're bringing things up to standards so that day in, day out, things will be running at peak levels. Step 4 is the ongoing management, because we have to put ongoing TLC in place. And I like to call TLC technology love and care. We have to put the TLC in place in order to keep things running at that peak level. Because, once things are running at peak performance, if you don't do anything further, then things will slowly degrade over time. So that ongoing management will keep it where it needs to be. But step 4 is the most important process, And that's the strategic process.
Yeah.
And that's where you're talking about here, that long-term strategy. And that's taking a look at, beyond those hardware rotations that you're talking about, is looking at where, where are there any kind of holes in their workflow? Where are ways that they can improve the delivery of their product or service to their clients? How do things, how are things operating with their employees? And when it gets from step A to B to C to D, are there gaps there and holes there that are bringing them down and costing them money?
And if you want to find a way to get to the table to have that conversation, just help your customer with the first strategic thing, which is erase those blind spots where they get, knock 20 grand, and give them that total cost of ownership budget. And when I say total cost of ownership, I want to spell this out. This is, our budget includes everything they spend with the copier guy, everything they spend with the camera system guy, the door access control vendor, what they spend on Adobe licenses, sure, what they buy through me from Office 365 or Datto backups or, my managed services products and those kind of things. But if there's a fee, connected to the internet connected toaster, I want to know about it and I want it on their budget. Because now when I go to my customer and I go, hey, Dan, I need you to spend 20 grand, and you just look at me and go, no, thanks, dude. COVID's been terrible. We're broke. Get the hell out of here. And I don't know why, right? I built this beautiful proposal. We had a conversation. You agreed with me. We needed to replace this server. And then you told me no.
Yep.
I don't even have any hair to scratch, but I'm going to walk out of there really confused. So, but and what we never find out is that, oh, well, they had a big expensive line of business application, or they just bought outright this other piece of technology or this other thing that we should have seen coming. They had a Salesforce renewal and they got 2 months free for paying $4 at the beginning of the year. And here I am presenting my server on top of that. And they just dropped 30 grand with a software vendor. If I had known that, I'd have sat down with them and said, hey, I see you're paying 30 grand to Salesforce this month. Probably not the time to replace the server. Should we extend the warranty on the server for 4 months and then replace it down the road? And then we could have had that's a strategic conversation. That's hey, how do we find a win-win where you stay protected, your business stays up and running, and we still replace stuff that I'm worried about in a reasonable time frame.
And if you're basing your numbers, your projected growth off of what you think is going to happen without knowing what the realistic aspect is of what the client's expectations are and what their needs are and where their budgets are, then you're not going to hit your own numbers.
You're guessing and you're wishing. Yeah.
And
it's all wishful thinking.
You mentioned TCO and that total cost of ownership. And I wrote a blog several years ago, but we all seen millions of times the iceberg model, that iceberg where, at the top of the water, what you can see, what our clients see is, I bought my hardware, I bought my software. That's my total cost of ownership.
Yep.
Down below the water is everything else that it takes to manage and run technology and the responsibility of having technology. Those are the things that through these conversations that we need to help them to see and identify so that they truly understand what the true TCO is.
Well, and if you have a client that's running high-end CAD software or CNC software or Salesforce or big boy HubSpot subscriptions and EMR, EHR software, that stuff might be more expensive than the MSP is, right? Those things get really expensive. Those are big bills for the customer to tackle, and we just need to put those out there. We need to be able to pinpoint them on the timeline and say, hey, I understand I'm competing for wallet share right here. There's a big expense. And even though I'm not competing to sell you that product, you couldn't buy it from me if you wanted to, but I am competing for wallet share. And I know you can only spend every dollar once, Mr. Customer. Does it make sense for us to move my spend a little bit? And that's what I call giving our customers permission to say yes, right? We're taking away their ability to say yes by surprising them with that expense when we don't know what else is going on in their business. And if we can learn the rest of what's going on in their business, we remove roadblocks and give them more permission to be able to move forward with the things that we care about.
Right.
So, and to that point, like once we wrap that up, you can see the logical flow here, right? We started with the agenda. How does the conversation start? We went into an assessment. What's the status quo? We talked about budget. What does it cost to maintain the status quo? Now we're on recommendations. So this is starting to look, 5 things we can do in a QBR might actually be the majority of a whole QBR once we put all this together. The next step is that recommendation, right? We figured out that the status quo has a gap in it. Maybe it's just that we're still doing things like we did them in 2015 or 2017. We haven't added that next layer of defenses to the cybersecurity onion. We haven't added the next layer of that onion to protect the customer. Maybe we just have some stuff that's getting old and needs to be replaced. But what we're really looking at is the ability to show our customer what better looks like. We showed them the status quo in that risk assessment. What does better look like? And can we afford to make the investment to move the needle a little bit? So when we present it, there's a lot of red on there. This asset's old. It causes you problems on some risk assessment item that we were worried about. And for this money, it's not just Dan's Tesla payment or Alex's Maserati payment. This is that planned expense. We've been talking about it for months because budget. We've been talking about this for months or years. It's time to pay the piper to make sure that we keep our technology up and running and keep it up there, keep things in the right place. We're literally helping our client prioritize improvement over whatever else they might be able to spend their money on.
And just a reminder for our audience out there, if you have questions for Alex or I, please throw them in the chat. If you are watching live on Facebook, we have a pretty solid audience out on Facebook watching as well. Throw them into the chat out there, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you have. So please just keep that in mind.
Yeah. So, where it comes to recommendations, I would caution just one thing, which is, if you're just starting out with a customer, or if they're significantly immature where their technology is concerned, they may very well have 10 or 15 or 20 things you've got to fix. Be careful not to overwhelm that customer. You can add dollars in the budget in 2023 and 2024 for things that you think are low priority right now, and not even discuss with the customer what those are for. They live in your long-term budget, Mr. Customer. Don't worry about it. Let's deal with what's near term today, and we'll talk about those other things when we get there. Here's the things I've selected for you that are most highly impacting your business, leaving you the most exposed, causing you the most risk, maybe causing you downtime and outages, things like that. If you figured out the thing that causes IT glue outages, you better go to them with it so they can get their product back up and running, right? Oh, did I say that out loud on the internet? Oh. But if you have a thing that's causing a business to have outages, right, to have downtime, it's important to them. Their customers are probably annoyed. People are probably ticked. Employees aren't having fun. It's probably costing you employee retention to have technology that's acted up. So let's bring those things to the customer. Let's get them to the forefront. Let's help them prioritize the things that are important, and let's get those fixed, right? Let's go ahead and tackle those things. So recommendations are simple. They're easy. They need to be non-pushy. They need to be very factually based, and ideally, they're planned ahead of time. We've been able to tell the customer they're coming for months, if not years, as we build out that budget. So the better you get with the budget, the fewer surprises there are in your recommendations, and the more it's just a recap. Hey, Mr. Customer, remember we said we were going to need to spend $5,400 this quarter on this project. If I just send you the invoice, are we good to go?
Exactly. And, and also to just bring it up, and this kind of, it can fall into, many of the phases is, when we're meeting with our clients, or when we're servicing our clients, a lot of times, we talk about how we might not be present, and being present in learning from people within that environment is critical, because, we all know that, the VIPs are getting taken care of, and the VIPs might think that their experience is the same experience that's happening for all of their employees. And if there are employees out there that are, I had a chart at one point that showed like how many cups of coffee are they drinking or getting in order for their computers to operate efficiently, right? So those are the type of things that it's important, to get that from within the organization. And in order to share that information, because, like I said, the VIPs may not have any clue whatsoever that there's struggles out there.
So if you're a technical owner or account manager and you're presenting your QBRs, you're probably most blind to that versus a non-technical account manager who's presenting a QBR. And I'll tell you why I say that. At my MSP, I had one of each. I had a technical account manager and a non-technical account manager. The technical account manager could go dig in Automate, could go dig in ConnectWise, could go dig in IT Glue, find the answers, check the boxes, figure out how to do everything, and put the QBR together himself. The non-technical account manager could answer half the questions, and then would have to go to somebody on the service team and go, tell me about this client.
Right.
And guess what they got when they said, tell me about this client? They heard about the computer that was slow to start up, that got a phone call once a week that my computer's slow, and I have to answer the customer and say, yes, it is. It's 7 years old and it's going to be slow until we throw it away.
Yeah.
There's nothing I can do for you, right? But they get that call every week. They're annoyed by it. And when they realize that the account manager is getting ready to go talk to this customer, they'll pipe up. And so that non-technical account manager engages the help desk and gets all that feedback, and then can actually go give a better strategic business review, can have better conversations with the customer than that nerdy owner who's doing the QBR, who can actually, off the top of his head go, oh yeah, they have the right firewall and it's licensed for 6 more months. They have this, they have that, they have this, they have that. Boom, we're done. They check all the boxes. I don't have to ask anybody any questions.
Right.
So if you are that technical owner, understand that you start with that advantage, and that ultimately it puts you at a disadvantage if you don't go knock on your help desk door and go, hey guys, what can you tell me about this client? What might they need? What could I do for you when I'm meeting with them to eliminate some of these annoying recurring support issues?
Yeah.
Because every one of your customers has one. And if you don't know what it is, you should go ask the person who talks to them the most. They'll know what it is. They'll be able to tell you, and then you can go have that conversation and maybe give a little more business case around why this person with the 7-year-old computer needs a new one, because they spend a half hour on the phone with support every week, begging us to run one more scan on that computer in hopes that it'll find some magic bullet to make it run faster.
Because otherwise we're selling blindly. And, when you're selling blindly, I mean, let's just face it, the decision maker is going to say, well, why? I mean, if the only reason you have is because it's a 7-year-old computer, I mean, that's one thing. We should all know that there's expectations. We should be setting those expectations up front. In my MSP, we rotate workstations every 3 years, servers every 4. We can push it out to 4 years on a workstation, 5 years on a server. It's dependent on what the customer's needs are, right? So those expectations should be there, and the decision maker should know those. But if they don't, and you're just saying, well, we just need to replace it because it's 7 years old, that's one thing. But if you have the validation of why it needs to be replaced, and you have those details, you're going to be able to help them make the decision much quicker than without that.
Well, there's a tough conversation to have with every one of your customers, which is, if I'm Dan, I'm going to my customer and saying, I recommend you replace every computer every 3 years. How do you feel about that? And your customer's going to tell you, and you need to take that feedback. They're going to go, I think that's pretty soon, don't you think, Dan? And you go, well, what do you think? How often do you think we should replace? Oh, well, not until they burn up. Well, then I'm very quickly going to go back to my customer and say, well, then they're all going to burn up at once, because we're going to buy a bunch of new ones, whatever. They're all going to burn up at once, and you're going to have this big debt snowball you've got to account for. We really prefer to do some proactive budgeting, but budgeting only works if you actually have an established life cycle. So back to the life cycle, Mr. Customer, do you feel like 36 months is too often? Should we be looking at 48? And then when your customer, 48, that's my number, that's what I want. Well, guess what? Now they've just committed to it. It was almost their idea, and they think they got to win because they push back on you and talk that bad IT guy that we're not going to spend money just willy-nilly. We're going to hold on to things a little longer. And now you've got a guy who it was his idea, and he's going to expect you to help him replace every machine every 4 years. And that's why in our tool, we've built some of that in. Like, I can say as an MSP, 36 months is my default. But then for a customer, I can accommodate some of their business needs. And we really should think about that and include the customer in that conversation, because deep down, they know old technology is a bad thing. The problem is they never know when to replace it. They've never really had a plan before. And helping them build a plan is one of the most valuable things we can do for them.
Absolutely. And like I said, we all know when we walk into those accounts and ask about, their IT budgets, and they say we don't have an IT budget, they do want our guidance.
It's a great conversation starter too.
Right.
What makes you different from all the other MSPs that come knocking on my door? Well, we start from a fact-based conversation that really relies on you helping me build a budget and a risk assessment. And what? You don't just fix my stuff? Right. No, we actually the budget really drives the conversation. And we do help desk, but everybody does help desk. I mean, Staples will do help desk. I thought you wanted an MSP.
And there is nothing more amazing than walking in with this data, walking in with the budget, walking in with a plan. I mean, just talk about blowing somebody away, knocking them out of their chair. Just like, it's amazing. And the first time that you do it, and you do it with someone that has never had that level of support from an IT service provider, a managed service provider, that's what you do to build the strong relationships.
Raving fans.
That when times are, what's that?
Raving fans. It's how you build raving fans.
Absolutely. And, and when times are tough, because we all know that we might have the crystal ball when it comes to managing IT, but there is no magic wand. And there are going to be problems, and we are going to have to be face to face with that. And when we provide them with this full 360-degree type of support, it makes those difficult times less difficult because they know that you're covering them across the board.
Well, you just said something interesting, which is when times are tough, right? And we've just been through one of the toughest times for businesses, at least in my lifetime. I wasn't alive for the Depression, but I would imagine that 2021 was probably as bad for a lot of businesses, or at least they thought it was going to be as bad as anything we've ever lived through, right? So at first, everybody tightened up the checkbook. We all hunkered down and said, how are we going to get through this disastrous economy that's coming? Imagine if you already had a budget with your clients and they came to you. They're going to come to you differently than a company who has no budget. You never have those conversations with. The customer you never have those conversations with still isn't going to have a conversation with you. They're just going to cinch up their money bag and stick it in the safe. And when you come to them with quotes and recommendations, they're just going to go, nope, COVID, go away. That's the door, get out, right? Yeah. The customer who you've been having these conversations with is going to engage with you and say, we need to revamp my budget because I think I need to hold on to some things a little longer just to see how things play out. Can we move some money around on the budget and play what if I were to keep this server an extra year, if I were to keep these workstations an extra year, how does that impact me down the road? Yeah. And now I've got a customer who's almost working with me, who is working with me to figure out how they can move their spend differently, how they can make their spend differently, maybe hold on to some things a little longer. Maybe that's what happens. But guess what? Along the way, I'm able to readjust internally and say, okay, I'm not going to get $20,000 in project labor I thought I was going to get out of this guy this year. I'm not going to get it till next year. But I have a heads up and I have an advance notice of that, and I can start to plan for some of those kind of things. So budgeting just opens the book to so many better conversations with your customers. And if you're not doing it, I think it is 100% the drop mic report that we deliver out of Lifecycle Insights today. If we don't get going, we're not going to get to the last report we got to talk about.
I was just say, if we all have fixed expenses in our businesses, yes, there are variables that you can have impact on based on the ebbs and flows of our customers' spend. But those fixed expenses, a lot of them, I mean, it is what it is. And if we don't have insight to what our clients' budgets are and what their potential spend is and where there might be, where they might scale back, then it's going to have an impact on our business. And it's so critical to have the finger on the pulse of where their spend is going to be.
Totally, 100%. And so, as we kind of wrap up the 5 pieces that belong in that strategic business review, right? We started with the agenda. We moved on to the risk assessment, establish status quo. We talk about budgeting. What does it cost to support the status quo? Some recommendations. How can we improve on the status quo? And then the last thing I want to talk about is the executive summary. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, my calendar is way more full now than it was before all this Zoom crap.
Oh, right? Yeah.
Everybody wants to have a meeting with me, and I can never go, I'm not in the office at that time. We'll have to do it another day. Right. So it is Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Teams meeting after Ring Central meeting after Zoom meeting. Right. My calendar is just full of it. And I don't think we realize that even our less technical clients are kind of in that boat today. They've stepped back. They're working from home a day or two a week, maybe 3, 4, maybe all. So all their touch-ins, all the water cooler talk, all the just catching up that used to happen in the office now requires a meeting and a time slot and a block on your calendar. So these folks are just as busy as we are. And when we go give them a presentation for 45 minutes or an hour, or maybe we had a big one and we had to talk for an hour and a half, guess what? The minute they walk out of this meeting, they go into another one and they forget everything we talked about. And that is disheartening. That's like, why did I just do all that? Because he already forgot it all. And then I sent him the invoice on Monday and he responded to my email with, what the hell is this? Right. So, it's important that we leave them something that summarizes and wraps up the conversation that we had and say, Mr. Customer, if you don't remember anything, here's the 3 things we need to tackle, right? We talked about a lot of things. We justified a lot of things, but remember, these are the 3 things we needed to tackle this quarter. And the one thing that you committed to, the other 2, we're going to circle back on, whatever the conversation is, recap it for them and deliver them some kind of an executive summary so that your customer can, really understand where you are on the things you're working on. This is my check-in. what they're going to need to spend in the upcoming weeks and months and year. You don't need to go super into the future on that. Just say in the next foreseeable future, this is what your budget looks like. It's going to get better. It's going to get worse, whatever. And then what's urgent and how do we solve for the urgent? Like what can we recommend to solve for what's broke? So a really slimmed down, buttoned up, hey, here's the important things out of this email. Here's the cliff notes for this call we just had. And so this executive summary really gives us the ability to wrap it up tight, deliver it back to our customer and say, here, this is what we're going to make actionable in the next 6 weeks, 6 months, however long it's going to be before you meet with that customer next time. I think this is an important thing. It kind of also symbolizes to your customer, this is the point at which we're wrapping this meeting. So at this line where the rest of the stuff I present you is not that important. And after the executive summary, you can deliver to them the things that are rightfully theirs, but maybe you don't need to talk about. Here's a user list. Don't worry about it. I've checked everybody. They're still logging into Office 365. They exist. They all have MFA. They're all doing their security awareness training. Life is good. But, PCI compliance says thou shalt inventory the users. We'll know who and what we support. Here's a list of your users. Here's a list of your assets. Don't worry. They're all reflected on the budget. You don't have to look at this pretty color-coded list of assets. It's over here in the big, important financial stuff. But again, you're supposed to take an inventory of your users and your assets. So I'll deliver them to you. We can wrap some things up, some after the fold or below the fold information. It's not as important as what we talk about early in the meeting. And when I deliver this executive summary, it's really kind of a summary to my client that, boom, we're done talking about the big important stuff. The rest of this is just light reading for you, or not so light reading if you're delivering a big security report that has the thud factor. But this is kind of that summarize, that opportunity to summarize things and tell your customer, hey, everything after this point is just me making you aware, and none of it's really important.
Exactly.
So I do think that Zoom meeting fatigue is something that we and our customers are experiencing. And I think we got to learn to operate a little bit differently when we leave out of a meeting to make sure that people walk out with what's important. And then we're going to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, because everybody is so comfortable with those type of meetings, it does give us an opportunity to be able to connect with them in a way that we hadn't before versus just over the phone. And so, still use that to your advantage.
Yep. And so, that kind of leaves us to the point where, we have all these meetings. Sometimes we need to update the client on something in between meetings. Sometimes we have clients who just aren't worth, and this sounds terrible to say, aren't worth it for me to go make a quarterly meeting for. Right. If you're a small MSP or you're still hanging on to some clients that you had when you were way smaller and all business was good business, maybe you've got that customer that spends $250 a month with you. And they've only got one computer. Maybe they spend $400 and they've only got 2 computers. Great, you're getting $200 an endpoint. But by the time I put 3 hours a quarter into prepping for a QBR, delivering a QBR, and making actionable all the things that happened in it, I now have no time left to put into supporting that customer. So if they make one support ticket, I'm now losing money.
Yeah.
This is a customer who we ought to be automating some of this conversation with, and maybe just emailing them some information. And I put up there a quote. One of our partners, Dave Cole, says, "We are but the stewards of our clients' information." And I love that so much, because all the time we hear about MSPs going, you can't have your passwords, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I'm a believer that this is your customer network, and we need to find ways to make it so that we can give them everything. All of my clients had a break glass account. If Alex gets hit by a bus, here's passwords that you need to log in. Now I had a script running on every important machine that as soon as an admin logged in, we got an email that said, hey, somebody logged into a server with an admin account. So if somebody's running network detective on my boxes, I'm going to know about it.
Exactly.
But it doesn't mean that we should be keeping this stuff from our customers. So we would err on the side of giving them all of that information stewardship. And so we've built a feature into Lifecycle Insights that we haven't talked about a ton yet. We call it AIR. It's Automated Insights Reporting. And what it does is it gives us the ability Asset Insight Reporting. I want to call it automated because it is. It gives us the ability to pre-populate some settings and say, every month or every quarter or every year, send this report out, send this asset list, this software license list, this list of important things out to my client. It's colored red, yellow, and green. It's 7 pages long if you have a ton of assets. This one's page 1 of 6 for 58 assets. But it shows them everything that they own and helps them identify which things are aging out and which things need to be replaced on a near-term basis. This is a substitute almost for having to meet with some of your smaller clients quarterly. that little guy who's only got 5 or 6 machines, who nothing's changed in the last quarter, and you probably don't need to talk to them, send them an email. Pre-populate the email every quarter, just bang it out, let the system bang it out, and just drop that in their mailbox. Hey, here's what you own. If it's in red, you should be thinking about replacing it by now. If it's in yellow, it's upcoming and you should be thinking about replacing it soon. And this is kind of your alert that we need to be working on some things with you. We'll be back to meet with you at your annual meeting in November or whatever. But your smaller clients, you really should break out in a different cadence and meet with them once a year, twice a year, something like that, so that the amount of time that you put into account management doesn't submarine an entire account and make them no longer worth the time and money that you put into them.
And so Air is, you said, is a new product.
Air is a new product. It's standalone from our existing product. What it does is basically it gives you access to an emailable asset list. It gives you all of the warranty lookups. So all the stuff that people are doing with some other product today, it might rhyme with ScalePad. And it basically, it gives you the ability to go out and look up all those warranties: Dell, HP, Lenovo, Microsoft Surface, Cisco, and Meraki. We'll look up the warranties. We'll build the warranty, or we'll build the asset report for you. We'll let you send it out an email, or you can just write the data back to your PSA where you want to see it. And it's all at a flat rate of $79, unlimited assets, unlimited company. So if you're overpaying for another product, this is the time to save some money and pull some of that back.
And that's $79 a month. I mean, that is an extremely affordable.
Yeah, I hear from folks who tell me they're paying $400 and $500 a month for features like this from other products, and they're locked into long-term contracts. And this is a month-to-month thing, no long-term contract. So when one of my developers saw what people were paying for API calls, he just shook his head and said, "This is ridiculous. We should fix this." So this is our little darn near freebie to the world. And honestly, we'd probably give it away cheaper if some of these folks would fix their APIs, but we do spend a lot of time fighting with broken APIs like HP. Some of these guys haven't had their APIs working in a long time, and we definitely fight the good fight. But our devs are amazing. They get it done. They keep these things cranking. So it's a great product. It's a great bonus, really affordable. It's a rounding error to most MSPs. If you sell one new workstation a month, you've paid for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that, that kind of wraps what we're going to talk about today. If you want to learn more about us, you can get a free trial over at lifecycleinsights.io. Dan has negotiated a coupon code for you guys that gets all of the everything MSP partners a little discount. I think that is 10% off, but I don't remember. So surprise, you'll get yourself a discount, and you'll have to figure out what it is. If you want to follow me, then my LinkedIn is there. If you want to know more about the company, lifecycleinsights.sucks. We take an interesting take on customer testimonials on that website. Go check it out. It's always worth a laugh. And then if you want a couple of the things that we talked about today, the QBR your customer deserves is a printout of all of the content that we think you ought to be delivering at a business review. There's copies of at least one of everything that we talked about today: a budget, a risk assessment, those kind of things are built into the output. Steal it, make it your own, use it as ideas, build it in an Excel spreadsheet, whatever. And if you want to borrow our exact agenda, there's also an agenda download that you can use to help move yourself forward in your business practices. So, those are the things that we can give you for, just for hanging out today. And if there's anything else, if you just want to have a conversation about improving something you're working on, hit me up on LinkedIn. We don't do a big sales pitch. It's just an educational conversation, and we'll help you where we can.
And also too, Alex is a regular on our MSP discussion group. We every Wednesday and Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern time, we have the Everything MSP discussion group. If you go to everythinmsp.com, you can get more information on that. But Alex is on there on a regular basis, and I greatly appreciate how much
on my calendar to be there tomorrow. So
yeah, absolutely. And Alex is feeding a lot of information, not about his company, but just being an MSP. He's had an incredible amount of experience being an MSP. And as you say, you're a recovering MSP.
I still identify more as an MSP than I do as a vendor. I understand what it's like to be an MSP. I know there's 5,000 companies out there who have made a business model in separating you from your cash. It's why, as a vendor, we've worked really hard to build affordable products that deliver value, and it's why we stand behind our product with a make money or it's free guarantee. We don't talk about it a lot because we never need to talk about it, because folks who use our product and follow our process make money. But I think we're one of the only products out there that will that will stamp and make money, whether it's free guarantee on their product. And
That's
it's
awesome.
important to us to be different than the vendor that's just out there to separate you from your cash.
Exactly. Alex, I greatly appreciate your insight.
Always a good time.
Yeah, I love talking with you, my friend. And
we should do it more often, but this much good hair on a webinar is not normally allowed.
Exactly. No matter what I do, the shining it doesn't go away.
I don't razor it, so it's just clippers there, so there's no shiny. But
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and for all those that attended, we greatly appreciate your time. We hope that you learned some great information here today. And we will be getting out information about a replay, so you can share it with other people on your team, as well as any of your friends that are in the industry. We are in a great industry, great channel where people love to share and help each other out. So with that being said, everybody, Alex as well, have a great rest of your day, and we will talk to you guys soon. Peace out, everyone.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.